The UFC just unveiled their new AI ranking system, and it's pretty flawed to say the least. When the UFC originally announced they were kind of introducing this new ranking system, I was cautiously optimistic. I do think there were going to be some ways to kind of optimize the current rankings, but I also wasn't super positive the changes were going to be great. And I felt like the UFC would kind of tinker with them to maybe push up certain guys that, they want to promote, some of the bigger stars. I wasn't expecting as much of a change as we actually saw with these AI rankings. And so I kind of just want to run through every weight class, give my thoughts on some of the changes, and then also just kind of touch on some of the bigger picture things we're looking at here with these new rankings. And I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you like the changes? Do you dislike certain things? Let me hear it. But I want to start off in the flyweight division because I think we see some of the problems in this weight class specifically. And, you look at the top, you've got Joshua Van. The first, 6, 7 names don't seem super controversial to me. Pantoja, Kopp, Tyra, Royval, Kavanaugh, Horiguchi. These all seem to be pretty similar to the rankings, before this new AI system. You get to number 8 and you have Amir Albazi. Albazi is one of these guys that has just been pretty criminally overrated in the rankings for a while now. And you'll see with some of these other fighters, a lot of guys that don't have recent wins have kind of fallen off, either dropped way down the rankings or have just been straight up excluded from the top 15. Amir Albazi, for whatever reason, is still kind of holding this spot. You have Moreno at number 9, and then I think you see two huge issues here at number 10 and number 11. You have recent winners from last weekend's Apex card. At number 10, you have Kevin Borjas, and at number 11, you have Mitch Raposo. To me, if I'm the UFC and I'm about to release this thing, these are two just massive red flags where these guys in the top 11 do not pass the eye test here, right? Kevin Borjas coming off a big win as an underdog against a very good prospect in Lima, but Lima was not a ranked fighter. Lima did not have any high quality wins previously in the UFC. And so how is a decision win over Lima making you a top 10 flyweight in the world? And then for Mitch Raposo, he picks up a win against Alan Nascimento, another, solid win, but not someone who is a staple, locked into the top 15 at flyweight. And so it seems like this is very recency based, which has some pros, but not to this extent, especially when you consider some of the fighters that are ranked after both Borjas and Raposo. You have Sumadarji, who has been very effective as of late, has picked up, in my opinion, better wins than, the most recent wins for Borjas and Raposo, but he's ranked behind them. Steve Erceg ranked behind them. I think a win against Tim Elliott is probably superior to, a win against Lima or against Nascimento. And then to me, the most glaring issue is this Charles Johnson ranking, right? I mean, this is a guy who has 2 extremely high quality wins against Joshua Van and Lonnie Kavanaugh. And I don't know if those were too long ago to really qualify here, but to me, Charles Johnson should easily be ranked ahead of both Borjas and Mitch Raposo. And Borjas, by the way, what's his record? 2-4 in the UFC? Someone who's 2-4 in the UFC, you're considering them to be a top 10 flyweight, or I guess top 11 flyweight in the world. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So the first division I looked at was flyweight, and it's not looking great for the new rankings. Now moving over to bantamweight, I don't really have any issues at the top of this weight class. Marab, Umar, O'Malley, Sandhagen, Batista, Song Yadong. That all looks cool to me. David Martinez at number 7. To me, he's someone who's overranked because of his win against Cheeto, where he was able to just kind of take Cheeto's spot. Ideally, that's something that, would be kind of corrected in these rankings, which is interesting because Cheeto got booted from the rankings. And so I don't get how the win over Cheeto is boosting Martinez to number 7, but you're really not considering that Cheeto win to be super impactful because, the AI rankings don't even have Cheeto in their top 15. So I think that is interesting. Ione Barcelos number 8 seems very high. Marcus McGee at number 9. I like Marcus McGee. This seems very high. I don't know if there's some weighting on a competitive loss to Piotr Jan, like he took a round from Jan. Is that giving him a boost? Maybe. We see Figgy kind of move down the rankings, but I don't really get, Cheeto moves out of the rankings because he's been on a really rough stretch. Figgy's 1-4 in his last 5, only win a controversial split decision against Montel Jackson. To me, he seems like a candidate that should have moved even farther down the rankings. Eamon Zahabi at number 12, Charles Jourdain at number 13, Bryce Mitchell at 14, Montel Jackson at 15. I'm going to look at the media rankings to see if there's, some huge movement at 135. So Peyton Talbot just got bumped from the rankings. He was originally ranked. Now he's not. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense considering his most recent win against Cejudo is a lot better than some of the other recent wins in the top 15. Cheeto got booted. Raul Rosas got booted, which I don't think is the craziest thing, but he did pick up a win against Rob Font. And so once again, I don't know if Bantamweight is as bad as Flyweight, but I think there are still some pretty clear flaws here and also just some kind of inconsistencies on how I guess the AI is ranking these dudes. Next up at Featherweight, this is a weight class where the rankings really just got kind of flipped on their head. Now, the top 6 or so I think is very reasonable. You have Movsar, Lopez, Murphy, Aljo, Arnold Allen, and then Jean Silva. I will say Allen over Jean Silva doesn't really make a ton of sense to me, considering Silva's coming off a win against him, and then Arnold Allen was coming off a win where he fought down. But for the most part, I think that top 6 makes a lot of sense. This is where things go very, very south. Pat Sabatini coming in at number 7, the 7th best, or I guess 8th best featherweight in the world is Pat Sabatini. Cannot get around on that one. Yusuf Zalal at 8, fine. Nathaniel Wood goes from unranked to number 9. Kevin Vallejos at number 10. Melquizael Costa at 11. Steve Garcia at 12. Aaron Pico at 13. Brito at 14. And then Jose Delgado at 15. Now, I don't hate the idea that a guy like Nathaniel Wood or Pat Sabatini could get bumped into the rankings without having beaten a top 15 guy, because oftentimes beating the 15th ranked dude in the division doesn't always mean that's a better win than beating someone really good outside the rankings. Like Nathaniel Wood, he's coming off a win against Losen Keita. To me, that's a more impressive win than potentially beating a guy like Josh Emmett. It's just that Josh Emmett has that ranking attached to his name and Keita did not. So if they put Wood and Sabatini at 14 and 15, okay, I don't really have a problem with that. I do have a problem with Pat Sabatini jumping up to number 7 and Nathaniel Wood jumping up to number 9. I mean, I want to pull up Sabatini's Tapology here because I know his last win was not super impressive. It was just a very decision-heavy performance, and he is on a solid win streak, but a decision win against William Gomi is getting you to number 7 in the world at featherweight. To me, that's insane. He should not be ahead of Zalal. He certainly should not be ahead of Kevin Vallejos. I mean, even Steve Garcia, Melquizael Costa, Aaron Pico. To me, he should be pretty firmly behind those guys. And so once again, I think there's too much of an overreaction to a recent win. Yes, on May 9th, he beat William Gomi. Does that mean he should jump over some of these other just much better, more proven fighters? To me, the answer is very clearly no. I also want to take a look at some of the guys that maybe got booted from featherweight. So they booted Brian Ortega. Yair Rodriguez got kicked out of the rankings. Josh Emmett got booted. And so I'm not against, removing fighters who don't have a recent win in the last few years, but, just completely removing those guys and then launching Sabatini and even Nathaniel Wood up that high just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Now let's take a look at lightweight. And once again, the top of the rankings doesn't seem all that crazy. Ilya, Armin, Oliveira, Holloway, Benoit Saint Denis, Mateusz Gamrot, all that seems pretty reasonable. At least to me. I think we start getting a little wild with Quillen Salkild at number 8. Once again, I think just too much recency bias, where why does a win against a pretty washed up Beneil warrant you getting to number 8? Paddy Pimblett, lower than I would have thought. This is kind of a system where going in, I was like, all right, they're probably going to boost some of the stars. Paddy Pimblett coming in here at number 9, Rufy at number 10, Dan Hooker at 11. You get some of the fresher names, Tom Nolan, Manuel Torres. Fiziev has been kicked out of the rankings, which I think is pretty extreme, and I just don't really agree with it. I don't know why Fiziev is getting kicked out. He has a recent win against Ignacio Bahamondes. We did see Beneil get kicked out of the rankings, which I think is fine. So lightweight isn't the worst thing in the world, but I definitely don't understand Quillen Salkeld, being a top 10 guy in the rankings at this point in time. I think he's very good, but once again, I just don't think he's proven it in the octagon yet. Now shifting over to welterweight. Once again, top of the weight class, not super shocking. Prates, Gary, Morales, JDM, Brady, Bonfim. I don't know if there's a ton of disagreement there. I do think it's interesting that Bilal Muhammad doesn't seem to be getting kind of taxed for not having recent success. He's on a 3-fight losing streak to JDM, Ian Gary, Gabriel Bonfim, coming off a pretty rough last performance, but he's not taking the same hit that some of the other fighters are that are on losing streaks. So some inconsistency there. Kind of a similar thing with Leon Edwards. He's not getting moved down the rankings. I don't get Kamaru being ranked over Buckley or under Buckley. Kamaru, his last win is against Joaquin Buckley. Buckley lost that fight and then proceeded to lose again. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. The rest of this division, I don't really hate it. Malat, MVP, D-Rod, Uros Medic, and Yaroslav Amosov. I think that's fine. I do wonder, though, you look at a guy like a Sabatini, a Nathaniel Wood, who are picking up good wins outside the top 15. What leads to them getting this huge jump in the rankings? Whereas, someone like a Miktabek Oralbai with 2 pretty dominant wins at 170 against Jack Hermanson and Chris Curtis, what prevents him from kind of getting the nod here at 170? I just don't really know. I guess we'll have to wait and see how the rankings kind of evolve. Now looking at the middleweight division, you've got Strickland as the champion, Hamzat, DDP, Imavov 1, 2, 3. Don't hate that. Brendan Allen at 4, Pfeiffer at 5, Kaio at 6. For the most part, I think this division looks pretty decent. I think Izzy probably overranked. Another guy where it's some of these fighters on long losing streaks are being punished. Why isn't Izzy? I believe he's on a 4-fight losing streak, finished in the last 3. Why is he not getting taxed? I don't know. You see Bo Nickel get launched into the rankings. I think that's flawed. You see RDR taking a hit. So RDR has 2 tough losses, right? Back to back, and he's down to 15. The guy that he dominated in Bo Nickel picks up some wins against lesser opponents and then jumps RDR. That doesn't really sit right with me. Let's look at if anyone got just bounced from the rankings. Doesn't look like it. Whitaker got bounced, but he's moving up. Delidze got dropped. So just some minor issues later on. But once again, why does RDR get punished for 2 back-to-back losses, but Izzy doesn't get punished at all? That doesn't make sense. Now looking at light heavyweight, this is kind of an interesting weight class. I actually like that Paulo Costa is kind of getting some respect here, coming off a big win. What I certainly don't understand is Jamal Hill being ranked number 5, whereas you have Jan Blachowicz, who's been completely removed from the rankings. So believe Jamal Hill has lost 3 straight fights. He gets to hold number 5, also ahead of Khalil Roundtree, who beat him, whereas Jan Blachowicz, 0-2-2 in his last 4, he is now completely removed from the rankings. Don't really understand that decision. Also, Dominic Reyes just moving up to 7 feels very, very high here. You've got Navajo Sterling getting some respect in the rankings, or Jan's 15, so right on the edge of being bounced from the rankings. Did anyone just get completely removed? I don't think so. Krylov got removed. Rakic got removed. So I don't know. Light heavyweight, not the worst thing. But once again, I just don't understand what the cutoff is for some guys being punished for poor recent fights and other guys, seemingly able to kind of hold steady. For the final men's weight class, we have heavyweight. And I don't think there's anything crazy going on here. This is actually probably like the most normal set of rankings. I think Hokit jumped Waldo. Pereira comes in at number 4, which I guess is fine. I don't really know how that's decided, but I guess you see Walter Walker, I think, move up. Brando Perisic, I think, moves up a little bit. Derek Lewis got bumped from the rankings, which I don't think is the craziest thing, but once again, back-to-back losses against pretty good competition. You know, Hokit, Waldo, top 6 opponents. Other guys, longer losing streaks, you know, they get to hold their ranking. So don't really understand that. Let's see, did anyone else really take a hit? Is Tyrell Fortune in these rankings at heavyweight? Tyrell Fortune? I don't know what Tyrell did to these people, but he got bounced from the rankings even though he's coming off a win. So that one doesn't make sense. Maybe there's some sort of like ramp up period for fighting in the UFC because he's coming in from Bellator, but Kuniev just jumped right to the top. So maybe that's just an oversight. I don't know. That's kind of strange. And then in the women's weight classes, I think specifically at strawweight, Mizuki here at number 9 seems like a pretty big overreaction. I think Fatima Klein is ranked too low. Did Angela Hill get completely removed? So Angela Hill picks up a recent win as a pretty big underdog, but she doesn't get respect, getting bumped into the rankings. So yeah, 115 kind of feels off. 125, they just kind of throw Zhang Wei Li in there. 125 actually doesn't look that crazy. Macy Barber maybe seems a little bit low. Was she? Oh, she's way lower in the media ranking, so I don't know about that. 125 actually might be the most reasonable rankings here. And then women's bantamweight, Luana Santos bumps up to number 3. That seems kind of like an overreaction. You've got Michelle Montague at number 8, but then you don't. Oh, you do have Bia Mosquita here. So I don't know. I mean, 135 is terrible, so I don't really know if I can be super angry about any of those. But my overall thoughts, I don't think it's good. I think there's just a lot of inconsistencies. Certain guys on long win streaks getting overranked. I'm not really sure like how they're valuing certain wins compared to other ones. You know, like it seems like recent wins for guys like Borjas and Raposo are being valued extremely highly, but why is Borjas number 10 and Imanol Rodriguez, who just knocked him out this year, isn't in the rankings? That's just what I don't really get. And so overall, I feel like these are kind of a negative. I don't think they addressed, or at least like properly addressed, some of the issues. Like my big issues with the previous rankings, like the media rankings, I felt like guys weren't moving down the rankings fast enough. So you had a lot of guys on long losing streaks kind of clogging the bottom of the rankings. I also felt like guys should be able to move up even if they were fighting down in the rankings. So like if you were number 5 fighting number 6, I felt like with a win, you should be able to bump up a spot or two just to kind of give some incentive in that matchup, you know, because like beating someone 1 or 2 spots lower than you should still be impressive and like be a bump to your resume. And then the other thing was I just didn't like kind of like the random movement where just you'd see a fighter kind of just move up a couple of spots or move down a spot or two just completely randomly without another fight taking place with them or around them. And so those were kind of my biggest critiques. I don't really feel like those have been addressed here. I feel like there's just way more questions than answers when it comes to this new system. But I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts. What are you thinking about the new rankings? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? What changes do you want to see? Let me hear it in the comments. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.